So this is information that's dealing with the Stuart dynasty. More specifically, right now, this article in the magazine known as A Crisis, dated February 1940. I want to kind of touch on the paragraph known as the Royal Family Tree, and kind of want to go into King James I here, which is talked about in this paragraph. Looks like right here, the portrait of James I of Scotland. Scroll up here. So it's talking about a portrait of King James I of Scotland, another ancestor of the British royal family. Reminds one of a type of full-blooded Negro common in the West Indies, except that the hair is straight. Now, most of us know that so-called black people come in, their hair textures come in all different types, whether it be kinky to moderately kinky to pretty much straight. Goes on to say, and as regards Queen Charlotte Sophia, wife of George III, another direct ancestor of the present royal family, her portrait by Ramsay in the National Gallery shows her to be decidedly Negroid. He says, I have a copy bought in London, which I have been showing to both colored and white persons without saying who she was, and they invariably take her for a colored woman, which was what first attracted me to the portrait to begin with, he says. So we read here that two of England's royal family here. Now, this is talking about, the first is talking about King James the First. And I just want to be clear on this. Make sure this is the portrait of James I of Scotland. And let me scroll up here again. It says another ancestor of the British royal family. Now, this is not talking about King James I and the sixth, the first of Scotland, and the sixth of Scotland and the first of England. It's talking about his ancestor, his forefather, that was long before him. It's just telling you right now that his ancestors were black people. Okay, so which would mean that King James II, the third, the fourth, the fifth, leading up to King James VI, who was ruler of England after the throne was bequeathed to him by his aunt, Queen Elizabeth, who was also a black woman. We'll get into that later. But it's telling you that the Negro origins of these people is not a rumor, it's not a myth, it is a fact. All throughout the lines, you're talking about black history, you're talking about Negro history, black history, African American history, whatever you want to call it, it's our history. It's time that we woke up and realized that our history is more than just slavery here in the Americas. There's a lot more beauty and royalty to our history than we even know. Okay, this segment here is a continuation of the previous segment in which we talked about King James I of Scotland. This is taken from the book entitled Memoirs of Royal Ladies by Emily Sarah Holt. The royal lady in question that this is going into is Queen Jane Beaufort, Queen of Scotland. She was a queen consort of the before mentioned King James I. We're going to start here at second paragraph here, in which it goes into a discussion of the son of King James I and Jane Beaufort, which was King James II. Okay, it goes into the death of King James I and how he was murdered, but what we want to kind of get into is basically the characteristics and descriptions of the people involved here. So let's go into it. First, second paragraph says, the little son of James I succeeded to his father's throne under the title of James II. So when his father was killed, his son succeeded to the throne under the title of James II. He was only in the 8th year of his age, and the queen, his mother, was appointed regent. She soon felt her utter inability to contend against the rude, fierce aristocracy who clamored loudly for their share of power. She had spirit enough and permitted nothing to be done detrimental to the interest of her royal son. But a quick eye and a strong hand were wanted to guide the helm of the state in that perilous day. At length, wearied out, yet feeling that she could not conscientiously surrender her trust, the queen regent determined to remarry. So the queen was looking to remarry after the death of her husband. Okay, now we already know what, we've already heard the description of King James I in the previous segment, and now we're about to hear about the man in which she chose to marry. Okay, it says, hoping that a husband might aid her with his advice, support her by his influence, and in her stead bear the brunt of the struggles with the nobles. The man whom Jane selected for her second husband was none other than Sir James Stuart of Lorne, descended from a remote branch of the royal family. So Sir James Stuart of Lorne was also from the Stuart family, and you're about to find out what he looked like, the same as the rest of the Stuarts. Descended from a remote branch of the royal family, who, from his swarthy complexion, as we know already, swarthy just means a black man, generally bore the epithet of the Black Knight. He was a man of somewhat rough exterior, but possessed a strong arm and a warm heart. So he's a good guy. So, in summary, we're finding out that not only was King James I a black man, of course, we're also learning that King James II, his son, was a black man, of course. We're also learning that when the queen consort of James I remarried, guess what? She kept it within the family. She married another black man. Let's continue on. Okay, this is going to go into King James III of Scotland, the son of King James II, King of Scotland, and it comes to us from the reference and book, A New and Full Critical, Biographical, and Geographical History of Scotland by William Duff. The title of this chapter is The History of Scotland, and what it's going to go into is the death of King James III during the battle, of course, and a brief description of what he looked like. Alright, starting at paragraph 1, it says, a king now dead, his army routed, and most of his friends killed in action. The disaffected lords were in high spirits and kept the field with their army till next morning, when they marched for Lithgow. The scattered remains of the royal army went off for Stirling, in the utmost conclusion and dejection of spirits for the loss of their king. Such was the extraordinary rage and prejudice of the lords against their king, that though they knew his majesty in the action, they pursued and were determined to cut him off, in open contempt of express order from the Prince of Rothsky, the king's son, published immediately before the action, intimating and commanding that no one, upon pain of death, of whatever rank or station, should pursue or attack his majesty's person, if his army should be defeated. In this fatal action, vast numbers of the principal loyalists were slain, particularly Alexander, Earl of Glencairn, a gentleman of fine liberal parts and great personal courage, the lords of Erskine, Semple, and Ruthven, and John Ramsay of Balmain, the king's chief favourite, newly created Earl of Bothwell, Henry Innes of Innes, Alexander Scott, and all their friends and vassals were also killed in the field. So most of the king's people, high-level people, were killed in battle during this battle here. It says the decisive action happened on the festival of Saint Barnabas, the 11th of June, 1488. And this is how we know this is talking about King James III, because the records show that this was a date in which he died. His Majesty King James was killed in the 35th year of his age, and the 29th of his reign. He left behind him 3 sons, James Prince Successor, Alexander Primate of Scotland, and John Earl of Mar. The Lords of Confederacy, in show of some atonement and relenting of spirits for the many wrongs they had done his Majesty, and at length murdering him, performed his funeral oskies with uncommon splendor and the most magnificent pomp. His body was carried to the Abbey Church of Cambuskenneth, and there deposited in the same vault with his queen. King James was of more than common stature, well proportioned, and stately in his person, and of a swarthy complexion. There we go again. It's telling you right there he was of a swarthy complexion, like his forefathers, a black man. He was of a swarthy complexion, no different from his lineage. He was of a very proud and haughty mind, and he could bear no person to share with him in power and government. Superiority without control was his study of men, was his favorite maxim. He knew very well the extent of monarchical power, but did not make the study of men any part of his concern. He was a man of some courage, but great temerity. He did not attend to the events and consequences of matter, neither did he study to mold, model, or gain the affections of his nobility, so as to be capable to alter, traverse, and direct their schemes and designs into the channel of his own interest. He was of too indolent and retired a disposition for the active and public parts of high life. This was imputed to an error in his education and habits he contracted in his youth, from the misconduct and neglect of his tutors and guardians. So just a brief description, just want to bring out, much like his ancestors, King James was the same. As they described in here, it was a more common stature, well proportioned, and stately in his person, and once again, a swarthy black complexion. Okay, before I move on, I want to touch on something because I've made the statement numerous times throughout these videos that the term swarthy means black or burnt face. Same thing. Adjectives describing the same thing. I want to use the 20th Century Encyclopedia or Encyclopedia, a library of universal knowledge edited by Charles Morris. Within this encyclopedia, let's go to the word Ham. In this case, Ham, it's talking about the eldest son of Noah, the patriarch of the Bible that you read about in the book of Genesis. And here it describes Ham, and it tells you everything about Ham. It says Hebrew, from the Hebrew term Ham, burnt, swarthy, black. These are all terms that mean the exact same thing. I'm going to read that again. Burnt, swarthy, black. It says, scripture here, a son of Noah, the impiety revealed in his conduct towards his father drew upon him, or rather, according to the Bible statement, on his son Canaan, a prophetic malediction. And it gives you the scripture here. Genesis, I believe that's chapter 9, verses 20 through 27. It says, Ham was the father of Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan. that is the ancestor of the Canaanites, southern Arabians, Ethiopians, Egyptians, and the Africans in general. Alright, so we see here that Ham, and if you read in the Bible dictionary about him, it tells you he's a progenitor of the dark races, excluding the Negroes. And we'll go into that at some other point. But what I want to bring out here once again is Ham. The descriptive terms here for Ham: burnt, as in Ethiopic, which Ethiopic means burnt face. It was just a Greek term given to the Cushites by the Greeks. Another term is swarthy. Another adjective for swarthy or Ham is black. So these terms swarthy and black are interchangeable. Both mean the same thing. You can even throw Ethiopian in there. All it means is black face. Just want to clear that up for you.